the same.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Thank you.
Congratulations. Thank you very much. Now we're going on to our next item, which is the progress update on the implementation of the Reconciliation Action Plan. And for this, I see I have a speaker. Let me just take a look. Yeah, online. Welcome to committee, and that is Miguel Avila Velarde. You have 5 minutes.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Miguel. I am a resident of Ward 13. I'm indigenous from Peru. I'd like to start by saying that I support the recommendations on this report. But I just want to give you an update to the members about the first bullet point, which says that the city will be in consultation with indigenous communities on the topic of the reconciliation plan. There is only one caveat. The city has an Aboriginal Affairs Advisory Committee, and currently this committee is reviewing their terms of reference. I think they're trying to be more inclusive of members of the community, I hope. My brother, Gary, an activist, First Nations from Thunder Bay area, he came to speak at the AAA about some important systemic changes based on the 1904 recommendations of the Truth and Reconciliation. My brother and I, we went to Ottawa in 2015 when the report came to be brought forward to the politicians in Ottawa for implementation and many other changes. I attended a rally in July the 1st, 2025. And this was in relation to the Bill C5, Bill 60, Bill 5 in Ontario. I understand that implications are embedded on Bill 60 and also on Bill 213. I believe there's another bill that has a real effect in the way the goals are set in these Truth and Reconciliation plans, which are 28, which are amazing. Amazing. However, when it comes to the federal level, province level, only 25% of those 94 recommendations have been implemented. So there is a lot of work to do across the country, across the provinces. We hope the government of Doug Ford is open to those changes. I know the struggle of indigenous people, especially in grass areas. They've been trying to get justice for the poison mercury. I understand that there is a demand to incorporate voices that are missing at City Hall. Councilor Carroll sits at the Police Services Board. She's aware that I have always asked, where is the indigenous person in the room that speaks for indigenous peoples? Councilor Carroll, you know, this advocacy work has started since 2010 during the days of Alok Markuji, the first chairman that I met back then. So we need to work to incorporate those voices at the Toronto Police Services Board. Also, we're missing a Toronto-made anti-Indigenous racism strategy, because all these good things, these intentions must be complemented with systemic changes, social changes. It's good to see investment in housing for indigenous people, thumbs up. Employment for our youth is incredible, but you know, it all depends on the political will. I thank Mayor Chow for championing for us at the province level, at the federal level, and everybody else at this committee. I think it's made up of good people with good intentions, but we have to go and tackle those two last recommendations by my brother Gary, an Indigenous man from North Bay, Indigenous representation at the TPS, and an anti-Indigenous racism strategy. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the deputant? Seeing none, questions of staff? I do have a couple of questions. So I thank you for this report. And while I see that there's a list here of some of the successful pieces, the funding framework, the Spirit Garden project, meeting in the middle strategy with Toronto Shelter Services and Supports, and task and the Toronto Indigenous Community Advisory Board work together, the people and equity pieces that have to do with Toronto's Indigenous Employment and Training Organization, and again, the Toronto Community Crisis Service citing as a co-creation with Indigenous partners. I want to probe the section on lessons learned, which I think is really refreshing to come to a committee, a reflection of where we've learned from what we've been doing. So I think that's important to highlight. Can you please capture some of the high-level lessons and what the city's response will be after this deep dive and analysis, and how you arrived at these lessons?
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Jennifer Hoffman, and I'm the Manager of Special Projects in the office of Denise Andrea Campbell, the Deputy City Manager for Community Development and Social Services, and I'll be addressing questions. Thank you for this one. In the lessons learned section, we talk about lessons we learned, many of these coming from our partners, but also from city divisions. It's been a busy 4 years of reconciliation efforts, but we do acknowledge that the plan's themes and actions included limited co-creation with Indigenous community partners. We want to adhere to the nothing about us without us sentiment, and we need to do a better job at that. So that's the first lesson learned. We also acknowledge that there's been a lack of a meaningful community engagement structure established to monitor the ongoing implementations of the actions, to validate the city's successes on the actions and those partnerships. There has been limited engagement with our local First Nations partners, and the city is working on a process to establish how and how we do that, when we do that work, and who's involved. While the city provides, and the report includes significant funding for different actions with Indigenous partners, there is limited capacity building funding. We know through our work with our partners who are beyond gracious with their time and energy in guiding city projects and the opportunities they've had for co-creation. These are busy organizations with executive directors and senior leadership who are working 24 hours a day to support their communities, and these additional asks for the city need to be compensated in a way that they can do that work and meet with us and not take away from the community while they're doing that. And then there's been limited socialization of the plan. So we need to do a better job at getting out there, sharing the plan with our Indigenous community partners, Indigenous residents themselves, and First Nations. And when I say sharing the plan, I'm referring to the work as it is, but your second part of your question is what are we going to do moving forward? And it's getting back into community, recentering the plan within their needs and wants, and deciding what is the future of the plan, what are our next steps, and being very open to hearing how community wants to see us move forward.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions? No speakers? Deputy Mayor Malik?
Thank you very much. I do have a motion and put it up on the screen. And my motion is City Council adopt and forward to the Federation of Canadian Municipalities the resolution to advance the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls national inquiry calls to justice attached in the motion. And I want to speak to that specifically in just a moment, but I want to start off echoing the gratitude for city staff in bringing us this report, for the Toronto Aboriginal Support Services Council, member agencies, and who have been collaborative partners in this work, and it's important to hear how that continued collaboration with community is strengthened moving forward. And this update lays out some of the progress that we've made in housing and shelter, in providing relevant and appropriate mental health support through the Toronto Community Crisis Service, through the realization of the Spirit Garden, which I so appreciate the opportunity to walk through every day, and that is part of my ward here in Spadina, Fort York, and through the work that is being done along the waterfront and part of waterfront revitalization. I look forward to keeping this work going as we develop a name for the East Bayfront Community Recreation Centre. And it also lays out the very real challenges to this work every day that we have to do better as a city, especially related to relationship building, meaningful engagement, and co-creation, and to make sure that the Reconciliation Action Plan is truly embedded in all the work that we do as a city, which it must be in order for us to do better. And I'm glad to see some of the recommendations get to this. And as it relates to my motion, Jessica Shirk, the Senior Project Manager for Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls, and Two Spirited People met with me this last spring with Lalua Habley from the Federation of Canadian Municipalities in the capacity in my role on FCM. And they recognize that our city acknowledges the ongoing generations of systemic violence against Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirited People as gathered in the national inquiry, and the urgent need for justice for those who have been harmed, and the action needed to prevent future violence and actually the opportunity to thrive. And we know the calls for justice must be implemented, but municipalities have never come together to call for this through the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, and Jessica and Lalua thought it was important that Toronto, as the biggest municipality in Canada and on FCM, to move this forward and to demonstrate our leadership. And I'm proud to do that today in partnership and in collaboration. And thank you to all who have provided their input. I really appreciate the dialogue that Jessica and Lalua opened up to us, the staff at the Assembly of First Nations, and with the support of my colleagues, our delegates to the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, Councillor Chris Moyes and Councillor Paul Ainsley. And this resolution will go next to the FCM committees and hopefully to the floor of the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, where we can keep this moving forward together upon our approval and council approval today. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the mover? Seeing none, any other speakers? I have a motion. I'm moving this on behalf of Councillor Paula Fletcher, who has shared this with the Deputy City Manager's office, and it essentially makes more specific some of the direction in the report to landed with respect to work with the Waterfront Secretariat, the General Manager of Parks, Economic Development, and reporting back to this committee, and that the City Council direct Waterfront Secretariat and the aforementioned with support of the Indigenous Affairs Office to report back on an Indigenous naming process for Coxwell Common in her ward, and finally directing the Executive Director of Housing Development Office to work with the Waterfront Secretariat and Waterfront Toronto for future requests for proposals for affordable housing delivery and Menacing to prioritize partnerships with nonprofit and Indigenous housing providers to deliver rental homes. I want to thank Deputy Mayor Malik for her motion. Very helpful and wonderful to see leadership from this committee and this council, we hope, to Federation of Canadian Municipalities. We have a really important role to play when it comes to the implementation of the recommendations of the commission that brought us all of those important recommendations with respect to missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, and it's something that I think is very useful and would support. And thank you to the Deputy City Manager's Office. In the report, it's clear that we have now the opportunity to, with the Deputy Manager responsible for Community and Social Services Office, to be able to learn from the past with this report and build relationships that are meaningful and that are in line with our Reconciliation Action Plan principles, which really are, working in a couple of ways. We have a very large urban Indigenous population of people who are just residents living in our community, organizations that are place-specific. The treaty with the Mississaugas of the Credit, it's a nation-to-nation relationship that we have as well. It requires a particular kind of attention and intention to make good on what we've committed to, and I think that going forward, this approach, what's being proposed to us, is something that's going to be healing, generative, and respectful, and it will produce excellent outcomes in many of the areas where collaboration exists and where new solutions and new relationships might be forged in the future. So thank you very much for all that work. I know that it's not easy, but it's fundamentally important to do it well.